Thank you, Daniel, for joining in this conversation. Start off basically, can you tell me broadly about the business of Aquivio and how did you get into this space?
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, first of all. With Aquivio, we are basically decentralizing the wasteful and inefficient beverage ecosystem. I got into this space actually through water technologies. My background was studying pharmacy. I was a professional bodybuilder and world champion in 2007. So I was mostly acting in the nutraceutical space, but I realized that the interconnection between the cell and the nutrients, that's actually the medium of water. So once I got sucked into this technology of water treatment, and not just water purification for safety, but what it actually does to our human body and how it interacts with the cells. That's how I went down the rabbit hole, ending up in a patented water treatment technology that allows us to produce alkaline and hydrogen infused water, antioxidant water, so to speak, on a commercial output level. And that, of course, laid the foundation for what we're doing with Aquivio, which is smart beverage dispensing systems that are, so to speak, micro beverage factories at point of use. Basically, a water dispenser and a vending machine in one that then enables, based on the technologies of automation and IoT, the end consumer to craft the beverages and the wellness water to their liking. So another incentive to move away from pre-packaged goods, but instead make it directly at point of use. And that brings so many benefits across the whole value chain, which is what we have identified is the necessary means in order to make solution that is impact at scale and technology for good at the same time.
Right. You mentioned customer can choose varied pH value, or how is it?
So the pH value is standardized in that sense that it's always alkaline. It is between 8 and 9.5, which is a comes relation of the input water. So we're using regular municipal tap water that goes through an extensive filtration process for safety, first of all. But then the post-treatment is where our technology comes in. So based on this technology and the core water abilities that we want to provide to promote health for the consumer, and actually to shift away from packaged plastic bottled water towards using the municipal tap water, which goes under extensive safety standards through all the government institutions and regulations already, making that more attractive. And of course, challenging the convenience of prepackaged goods in that way. But how to do it is exactly with this customization feature. So typically, the end consumer can then choose an array of non-sugar-based flavors and nutritional ingredients. So basically, for every use case where you could find our station, may it be a hotel where you're looking for a collagen beauty water with vitamins and antioxidants, may it be in a gym for a pre-workout or a post-workout drink, or in an office when you, for example, want to infuse electrolytes to enhance hydration and prevent the fogginess of forgetting to drink when you're working, or infusing even caffeine or lutein, which then gives these functional ingredients that can enhance your cognitive abilities, but also your workplace efficiency. So pretty much all across the board, all public facilities could implement it. And it's just a matter of making it value proposition that, of course, fits for everyone and makes sustainability ultimately even profitable if it's implemented in the right way.
Right. So, which are your biggest markets? At this point of time, where do you have your significant presence?
So I started this company when I had my technology, searching for a place where can we actually bring this technology from just a pure IP to an actual marketable product. And so I ended up ultimately living for 4.5 years in Taiwan. The first 3 years were the development phase, rapid prototyping, bootstrapping the company to market launch. And from Taiwan, we then expanded after our first round of funding to Singapore, which gave us massive exposure for the Southeast Asian market. And our second round of funding came majority from the US and, of course, Saudi Arabia, where now one of our focus markets for the GCC expansion is happening. So meanwhile, while having subsidiaries in Taiwan, Singapore, and Saudi Arabia, we are now also having operations in Malaysia and, of course, Japan, and currently also working with other distributors and partners for other regions in Southeast Asia. So, long story short, Southeast Asia and the GCC are our current focus markets.
So how does Aquivio kind of model challenge the present system, which is so heavily dependent on single-use plastics? So, what is the kind of measurable reduction in waste and emissions that your solution is able to deliver?
So the beauty of working with systems that are, of course, automated and fully cloud connected is that everything is monitored. I mean, of course, there is the aspect of ease of maintenance coming from that. But what is so important for sustainability is every pour and every dispense, may it be water, may it be those drinks that are being dispensed, are, of course, always recorded, which gives a tremendous amount of insights, which gives the possibility to also adjust towards the actual hyper-localized market needs. But when we're looking from an infrastructure perspective and the logistics of resupplies, number one, that means that directly we are saving 30 times the amount of packaging waste, since we're working with concentrates that are coming in back in boxes, so to speak, like it would be done in a beverage factory. But instead of doing it in a factory and then shipping water or the finished beverages around in trucks, we are doing that on the spot. You bring your own bottles or your own container. And in that moment, of course, saving the package by a factor of 30, and indirectly, of course, saving so many costs when it comes to logistics. So this means also, of course, less emissions from logistics. This also means less labor. And that makes, of course, the final end product. Many times, of course, these government regulations on how to improve sustainability are already in place. And now, from the perspective of adoption, it goes down to the next tier, which might be the big corporate offices, maybe the IPO companies that face the pressure to adopt sustainability. And many times, of course, that is a topic that is a must, but not necessarily something they actively want to do. So the economic driver is, of course, the force that will create the impact. So when we find the solution and we are utilizing this value that we can bring from the end consumer to the corporate, we can also facilitate, so to speak, a bottom-up approach that brings sustainability into the world. So I hope in this way, by working together that closely with stakeholders in the industry, we can now fill the gap that maybe is still there. Because if the mass adoption from the ground level wouldn't happen in the behavioral change, then of course everything would happen by force, and then the extra costs are just being passed down ultimately to the end consumer. But we believe that in the future, now that not only the economic models are shaping and evolving, the next step is sustainability in a mass adoption scale must become profitable and will become profitable. It's just a question of time and the right solution being implemented over time, and hopefully as quick as possible for the sake of the planet. And firmly also believing that sustainability, when we really think about it, is what our planet has thought for us. And we as humans, having basically detached from nature, the more we can bring this two together, it will be a healthier planet, it will be a healthier living for everyone. And of course, at the same time, also make companies thrive instead of seeing it as a cost position.
Right. So your platform integrates kind of, smart dispensing systems and data monitoring. So how does data play a role in driving more sustainable consumption patterns, both for businesses as well as consumers?
This is a wonderful question, because when you start analyzing what the market really needs and what the consumers really want, you're also indirectly preventing an overproduction of products that might not even be wanted by the market. So, what you see in the beverage landscape overall, there is a big trend towards functional beverages, and those ingredients that people want for their lifestyle. So before you had a couple big players in the beverage landscape, but now with the functional field being the fastest growing sector, there are so many new players entering, so to speak, very small brands that are going for these niche kind of ingredients, which are in some case not even validated. So that means when we analyze and we see from a data perspective what are consumers actually selecting, we are almost acting like a research platform for every market that we're operating in, where maybe the awareness for such functional drinks is not even that high, or maybe higher in some other cases, that we can actually rather identify what is needed and prevent unnecessary products to be produced. So not only from the layer that we're making the logistics and the packaging reduction, we might even play a crucial role in helping to identify what the market really needs instead of producing millions of bottles and functional drinks ready to drink that actually nobody wants in the end, ending up in a landfill.
So, I mean, you rightly mentioned. So, I mean, one of the biggest challenges in climate technology is always about balancing sustainability with cost scalability. So, how have you approached this trade-off? I mean, how do you manage to engage with large volumes and large venues when it comes to, let's say, hospitality operators or urban infrastructure players? So, at one end, obviously, I mean, water is a subject of the government, right? I mean, most municipal corporations manage that and supply that. So, but when it comes to such dispensing systems, what is the biggest challenge that you encounter when you are dealing with individual operators or large hospitality chains?
The biggest challenge is, I would say, in that sense, the shift of mindset to really get the message across, right? Many times you see water dispensers in some countries being more adopted, in other countries being less adopted, but typically they're being purchased as a commodity. They're standing in a corner and often forgotten or even not that appreciated. So the solution would be simple, right? If everybody would use them, we would not have a problem. In that sense, maybe not just seeking for the water by itself, or they're actually looking for these functional ingredients or beverages for the flavor, for the ingredients that they're going after. So in that sense, making corporations understand that by implementing technology like this, they will not implement a cost center, but they will implement actually a profit stream, because of course we can integrate also the payment systems. We can integrate it into membership systems, maybe a gym membership, and generate, so to speak, sustainable revenues on top of their existing business model. And depending on the location, of course, the impact that it can deliver is very dramatic. Like a corporate office, of course, in general, will save a lot of money when they have something like employment perks and offering free beverages to their staff. But in other cases, it might just be that they're in such a remote location that even supplying them with bottled water might already be so much more expensive than actually providing the functional ingredients that people appreciate more. So I wouldn't necessarily say the challenge is the corporate perspective. I would say the challenge is much rather the behavioral change of the end consumer. That's always the hardest thing to do naturally. But we figured out in that sense, sustainability needs to be so simple and so much better than the prevailing existing option that it is almost a no-brainer to go for the advanced stage. So you can see it in that sense. If an end consumer now gets the value add that they're getting the functional water, which has the healthier properties, including the flavors and including the nutritional ingredients at a lower cost of what it costs them normally to just buy a bottled water, in that moment, it is a natural choice. And of course, we cannot convince everybody, because of course convenience and comfort and carrying something with them is sometimes the most logical option to them still, or maybe just a habit that is not broken. But that is the way we see as the only way to get mass adoption start faster, by making it so simple and so convenient and so much superior than the existing options, that naturally the habit change gets accelerated and happens over time.
So where do you see yourself? Because I mean, this is such a consumer driven market, brand driven market. So, as a dispensing machine, do you intend to kind of, pursue the branding route where people seek out Aquivio flavored drink? What are your plans?
We do not understand ourselves as a beverage brand per se. So what we see in ourselves, we are a platform, we are a network provider or an infrastructure solution for smart venues or even smart cities. So we're closely talking, of course, with multiple governments, maybe in Asia or here in the Middle East. And it is very insightful to see how the approaches are aligning or happening. Like from an Asia perspective, I can see, for example, there is much more this regulatory implementations that IPO listed companies must file their ESG compliance report on an annual basis, which for that reason, the data that we can deliver on how much was saved in a smart venue, may it be in a university campus or in a high technology company office, is provided into this report. From another perspective, when we're looking into the East, quality of life, and I think that is a very important aspect for smart cities because cities, in our perspective, should be for the people and for the life quality of the people, might yet be on a higher priority. And therefore, we're kind of trying to also take in all these information from both sides, both approaches, position ourselves individually to what is actually searched from a government perspective, and then work together with the stakeholders from the private sector and find the best value proposition for the end consumer. So, of course, it is a B2B system in that place, B2B or B2G, and that can be then implemented into the entire office tower. It can be implemented, as mentioned before, a smart campus with an interconnected network of these stations under one service that runs under the flag or under the brand of the actual operator. So for us, we are more a B2B tool that can be used very versatile for the businesses and for the governments that we can work with.
So, I mean, you mentioned a little while ago about, a behavioral change. I mean, basically, it's about consumers getting used to, a new form of dispensing or, providing for their hydration. So, finally, sustainability obviously depends on changing this user behavior. So, how do you kind of design systems that encourage consumers to shift away from bottled beverages towards, a smarter reusable hydration model?
So in that sense, of course, this is the most important part, right? When we give the end consumer the confidence that the water quality that they're getting is not just safe, which the governments already provide, but then of course purified on even higher levels, and then also value added to alkaline minerals and the antioxidant properties of hydrogen, which is basically not a cost factor at all. But then on a second level, even giving them almost a gamified approach to say, I select exactly what I want, the way I want it, that of course attracts especially the younger generation. And that is also the generation that is much higher valuing sustainability, especially Gen Z. And in that sense, many markets are always talking about how can we target Gen Z and how can we capture their actual attention. And we realize that this aspect about the gamification or the habit that is already in their daily behavior to be in front of a screen, to be engaging with a digital medium, and in that sense, in our case, with our machine where they can select and choose and make it for them personally, they particularly value it much higher than just going to the store and seeing the different options that are presented to them. So that personal engagement, and then, of course, having that reward feeling that I did something good to myself, but also I did something good for the planet. And by the way, I saved some money, and especially that being one of the crucial aspects that might even attract the older generation like myself.
So, looking ahead, I mean, do you kind of envision a future where decentralized intelligent water systems become the norm in public and commercial spaces?
That is certainly the goal. That is certainly what we want to optimize, right? It makes absolutely no sense the way we have been doing it and the way we're doing it still with large beverage plants, trucks that are carrying water from A to B for no reason, when actually the possibilities to make it at the point of use, so to speak, as a last moment beverage production is so much more efficient. And since technology has progressed, we should use it for exactly those aspects to make life quality better, and at the same time also have the ability to even educate people more, because in that moment when they're having fun with it, when they're enjoying it, and actually realizing, oh, sustainability is not necessarily a sacrifice, but it's actually an improvement. That, of course, I feel is also something that greatly fosters the habit to look for even more sustainable solutions, because it needs to start somewhere. And what we always need to do, and what everybody of us needs to do, is we all need to hydrate. And I think it is never possible to fight an existing system. It is only possible to improve it so much and make it so convenient and easy that it becomes the natural choice.
Yeah. So Aquivio is participating at the Sushi Tech Tokyo. Is this your first time, or have you participated in the early editions of Sushi Tech?
It's our first time at Sushi Tech. We're very excited to be there, and we are so looking forward to engage with the Japanese tech community. We have been already exhibiting a couple times in Japan, mainly at Sport Tech, where we already secured several partners in Japan and ran some pilots. So now we are very proud to say that we have obtained our certificates for the Japanese market, and we are ready to execute the business in Japan. And being such a high-tech leading nation in the world, it's truly incredible that we can now also participate in the smart city approaches, that Japan is definitely one of the role models in the world. And hopefully in that moment also bring synergies and insights from other verticals or other markets in the world, and create a better and better solution for the planet, for smart cities, and work together, because in the spirit of sustainability is not being a national issue, it is something that has to be addressed globally. So the more we can, of course, unite and meet together at tremendous events like Sushi Tech, we are so excited to see what the future can bring and how to make it fast, because of course the world needs the solution as quick as possible.
As you expand into, more into Southeast Asia, Japan, and Middle East, have you come across any unique behavioral or regulatory factors which would shape the adoption in any of these markets?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the like stressed before, I can see, the government frameworks have been adopted sometimes quicker, sometimes slower when it comes to regulatory hurdles. Of course, we're dealing in the business of food products, so to speak, and food safety in that sense is absolutely crucial. These procedures sometimes take time. Some markets are going quicker, some markets are having more regulatory steps to be taken. But all in all, I would say once you achieve this level of international readiness, as we did, it goes relatively fast to expand into those markets. When it comes to the actual adoption and the implementation, I think it is very market specific, right? So from Taiwan, we see there is a governmental push towards the corporates to become more sustainable. But from other markets, it's more the awareness from the population that has a demographic that seeks it more. So regulations and approvals is just a matter of formalities, sometimes quicker, sometimes slower. But from the actual adoption, that depends also on how young is a society. And in that sense, younger societies, of course, learning it much quicker, while of course the older generations might still have a little bit of different priorities than looking for sustainability in the first place. But that is, of course, where the convincing aspect comes in, that if you replace an old system with a new system, that also gives them their value that they are seeking. We are unifying, so to speak, generations all across. And I think It is just a matter of localizing the service, which we have encountered with the nuances even between Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, or Saudi Arabia.
So as a business, what are your goals? I mean, it's for the next maybe 2 to 3 years. Is it in terms of how do you quantify? Is it in terms of the tonnage of water that you will dispense, or the number of markets you will enter, or the number of machines that you will install? What are the targets?
I think the most important number for myself will be how many lives we can actually touch. And that is dependent in that sense exactly on those agendas that I see with the government policy makers. And that can come from various ways. I personally see the biggest and the strongest value proposition on why change can happen is actually looking towards the end consumers and finding a way communicating with them how important and how critical sustainability is. And when combining sustainability and really understanding what it is, because nature knows obviously best what's for our life and how we should live, while at the same time facing this paradox that we are moving away from nature and living more and more in urbanized centers, it kind of detaches us more from this original source of life, so to speak. So bringing this into our modern lifestyle, bringing this into our modern cities, I would have to say I am deeply impressed and deeply inspired by the Vision 2030 here in Saudi Arabia, Vision 2031 in the UAE, Vision 2040 in Oman. And quality of life is one of the most important aspects of it. And I'm really hoping that more and more smart cities around the world are not just measuring the smartness of a city by efficiency, but much rather by how can we make sure that people are living better. And exactly mentioned before, the nature is being often so neglected when it comes into our modern urbanized fast-paced life that we almost cannot relate to it anymore. And that is actually the essence of Aquivio. When we utilize a technology that is not, even though it is a patented technology, it is not a real invention. It is inspired by nature. It is looking at nature and on what kind of water nature actually, under ideal circumstances, wanted to provide to us. But we just need to enable it to come back and be part of our life. And once we have this harmony, it is a mutual win-win for the planet, but also for the people. And once it fits into the economic model, we all can prosper and have a better life quality. So using technology to actually support nature.
Right. From a sustainability perspective, have you kind of done your math that, let's say, a liter of water, I mean, how much, through the conventional, what is done today as bottled water compared to that, your system, I mean, what is the kind of carbon footprint that it saves, or how much environmental, damage is being kind of stopped? Is there any such kind of calculation that you've done at your end?
So, I mean, you can state the numbers from that one machine saves up to 30,000 plastic bottles by our average statistics. So it is quite a large amount, but of course, it's highly facility dependent or highly location dependent. But that, of course, is a large aspect on what we can quantify at this point. Now, this will be optimized further because now, after our first factories that we now have in Taiwan, we are now in the process of establishing our first beverage factory here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which will then enable us to do a localized production. So, in that moment, of course, the impact and the reduction of carbon footprint can be even more reduced. So, we are really looking towards this hyper localization strategy of whenever it is feasible enough, also from our operational side, to do it locally. And in that moment, not only reduce costs, but also make it more impactful in the reduction of emissions. That is the way we go, and that is the way we see it. But of course, this takes time, and it is a large project and a large undertaking. And therefore, of course, speed is of essence. And we're seeking out those markets where we see that the adoption happens to fast.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Daniel. It was great dialogue and, great speaking with you. All the best for Aquivio. And if you're there in Tokyo, hope to see you at Sushi Tech.
It will be an absolute pleasure, and I'm so looking forward to meet in person. And of course, have you also try our Aquivio solution in person then.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you.